And we're live. Gary Honeman, thank you for meeting with me. I appreciate it, sir.
You bet, Jordan.
How you doing on this rainy Thursday evening?
I'm doing good. I forgot my umbrella, but you kind of took care of me coming down. So
yeah, I'm glad I was able to take care of you. Walked over together, talked about some things before this important conversation that we're about to have.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely, for sure. Thank you for everybody who's watching right now, whether you're watching on the Terra TV network, which is the McDaniel College News Broadcasting Network, whether you're watching on from the JD Speaks channel, right? My YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, even though I really don't use Snapchat like that anymore. My Twitter, however you are watching this, thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. Just quick shout out to Terra TV, right? Gary, for being here. Thank you so much. And we're going to talk about some really important topics. We're going to be talking about racial equality, not only as it pertains to us and our experiences as members of the Carroll County community, but also on a national scale too, and what that looks like as far as the society that we live in as Americans. And I want to preface this conversation by saying that I'm not a social activist, right? That's not really my lane necessarily, but that also doesn't mean that I'm exempt from talking about the issues that I encounter each and every day. The fact that I'm a black student at a predominantly white institution, the fact that I do have a white girlfriend, the fact that I am just here present in this environment, and this is something that we encounter each and every day. Is important to talk about these issues. And I know that we talked about this last week. This is not just a white and black conversation, right? When we talk about racial equality, we're talking about all people of color. We're talking about Hispanics, Latinos, Native Americans, Indians, right? We're talking about Asian people, black people. Of course, all of these people are engaged and involved in this conversation, right? So again, my name is Jordan Davis. For those of you who do not know me, I am a motivational speaker. I'm a junior here at McDaniel College who is a communication major, and I'm also a development entrepreneur. And I have a very special guest with me. His name is Gary Honeman. He is a member of the Carroll Citizens for Racial Equality and has been so for over 25 years. He also serves at the Carroll Carroll Youth Services Bureau. So I'm going to pass it over to Gary. And Gary, I want you to talk a little bit about what CCRE is and kind of what you guys do as an organization.
Right, sure. Thanks, Jordan. And you invited me to our annual conference, accepted an invitation for you and I to have a conversation together last spring. There was a lot of positive support for that, and thanks to you for asking me to come back and follow that up here today. Just a few things from what you just said. CCRE, or Carroll Citizens for Racial Equality, was established about 25 years ago in response to some KKK activity that was quite visible in Westminster and Carroll County at that time. Now, it might be hard for some people to believe that we had people in robes walking down Main Street in Westminster and coming into our public library, but that's kind of where we were 25 years ago. And I was fortunate to work with a group of clergy people and a Baltimore-based organization called Interfaith Action for Racial Justice to establish a proactive presence here in Westminster and Carroll County to begin to promote diversity. And over the years, we've really become an educational and training resource for our community. And I'll talk a little bit more specifically about what that looks like and how we put that in motion.
Sure, definitely. Of course, we appreciate all of the work that you guys do at CCRE. As Gary touched on, I was blessed with the opportunity to actually participate in the Carroll Citizens for Racial Equality annual conference that we have every year. It was held this past April, I believe, or was it May?
It was this past May, I believe.
This past May, yeah, early May. And me and Gary sat and we had an interview. It was about 100 attendees. And we talked specifically about the Colin Kaepernick grievance against the NFL that happened earlier this year, and then later the settlement that was reached. And that was a very prominent issue and a very popular issue at the time. And I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to speak from a perspective of, a college student, somebody who's in the Westminster community, and it was just very nice to hear other people's, opinions and perceptions on that particular issue. So
right, and what I particularly appreciated about you being there was that certainly it was a lightning rod kind of issue and topic to present in the community. And quite honestly, we had some opposition to putting that conference on with that title. But what I learned from you and other presenters that day was the complexity and the nuances of those issues that I don't think had a platform to be heard and for people to understand. And so it really came back to education and awareness, which are the primary objectives of our organization.
Exactly, definitely. And I learned a lot just as a speaker through that event. There was a lot of research that went into the topics that we talked about, research that I know I otherwise probably wouldn't have done in preparation of that. And it's really kind of opened the floodgates for me as far as doing research and reading on my own about social justice. And I just want to frame this by saying that I'm still a baby in this thing, right? I know more today about social justice and, racial issues that we had than I did yesterday, and I knew more yesterday than I did the day before. So
yeah.
I'm consciously just trying to make myself more aware and educate myself on these issues.
Right, and I'd just like to piggyback on that I'm very much on the learning curve too. And even though I've tried to be active with this work most of my adult life, I don't think that there is such a thing as you've arrived, that you've kind of got it completely together and you are so well informed and you are so skilled at thinking about and responding to all of the nuance of a very complex issue. And I guess when I hear people say things like, I'm not prejudiced and I don't see color, I'm always struck by that because, first of all, unless you're telling me that you're blind and you don't see color, you absolutely see color. And there's nothing wrong with seeing color. It's kind of what you do with that. And as far as the comments about, I'm not prejudiced, well, that often is can be a kind of a first step of defending against being open to new information. So just to kind of speak to some typical kind of responses that we often hear. And I'm not being judgmental or blaming in that. I'm just saying that that's something I've learned over the years, that those are comments and reactions that often don't lead people toward more dialogue and information.
Right, and it's great that you brought up this sort of colorblind language that a lot of people or individuals who find themselves engaged in these conversations speak with. And I speak from somebody who is actually colorblind. I don't know if you knew, but I'm red to green colorblind.
Okay.
So that hoodie right there, I know you guys aren't on the set with us, but that hoodie right there can look green in some lighting, you know what I'm saying? So, I actually struggle with that, but I don't get offended because of the connotation that people put towards colorblindness. But I think, as you said, it kind of puts up that defender wall. And when people use colorblind language, it denounces and it disregards the racial issues that we have in our society. Saying that you don't see race as something that separates people, as something that causes issues in our society, it's pretty degrading for the people who actually suffer from racial issues. And the fact that people are saying that they're colorblind or that they don't see color is saying that their experience being different from somebody else's has nothing to do with their skin color, which is absolutely not the case in the society that we live in.
Right. And at the same time that I am a proponent of people being open, I think we need to acknowledge times when we misspeak or we say things based on the lack of experience or information, that we're all human. And I think, unfortunately, things have gotten to a point where there's not much tolerance for that. So definitely. Again, if you go back to the goals and objectives of CCRE, it's about acceptance, education, and embracing people.
Exactly. And the whole point of us having this conversation right now is to bring awareness, especially to the people that are in the Westminster community, but most importantly, the students at McDaniel College. And this is a topic that I'm passionate about because it has changed my life in so many ways as I go now into my intercultural communication class with a more sense of awareness of just what's going on in the world. You know, I'm waking up and I'm reading the news and I'm reading the stories and I'm listening to the podcast. And I often ask myself, why is it so important for young people to engage in this kind of conversation, to be a part of this conversation, to, you know, obtain this information for themselves? And I think I talked about this example to you earlier last week, where I had a student in my intercultural communication class, and he said, you know, I really don't watch politics and I don't listen to politics because it doesn't apply to me. You know, politics doesn't affect me. And my eyebrows raised too, because of course, like this is a white student. And I told him, I said, I understand that your privilege up until this point has gotten you to a certain position without having to know about these kind of things. But the fact that you just completely disregard and say that politics doesn't play a role in your everyday experience is just mind-blowing to me, especially at the college level. So this is why it's important to have these conversations, because if the majority keeps on having this mindset, we're not going to have a lot of progress in these conversations that we're having. Because for you to say that politics plays no role in your experience, like you're going to go into the workforce one day and you're going to encounter a minority whose their race and politics has played a role in their experience. So even if it doesn't affect you, it is going to affect somebody else that is close to you, affect somebody that you're going to work with every single day. So you need to be aware of these issues, because when you walk into the office or when you walk down the streets of Baltimore, which is only 30 minutes from here, you need to know about the experiences that minorities go through each and every day as a result of politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would add to that is that there's the personal awareness and enrichment of allowing yourself to be in a learning posture. But if you look at corporations and the economic sector of the United States, often where there's a financial incentive to educate people, be more aware, be more sensitive. You're seeing HR, human relations departments and personnel managers beginning to stand up and pay attention to the importance of what we're talking about today. Because they literally can't afford to not do that. And on one hand, maybe it's kind of sad that there has to be a financial incentive to do this work, but on the other hand, however it gets done, whether it's in educational settings, professional settings, with industry, as well as community initiatives, it really needs to happen on all fronts.
Exactly, and as you brought up community initiatives, I want to ask you, what are some of the specific actions that the Carroll Citizens for Racial Equality has done over the past few years in order to, you know, further racial equality in Westminster?
Right. There was a time, going back again to 25 years, where we served as a resource to Carroll County Public Schools. At that time, there was no minority achievement kind of program going on with Carroll County Public Schools. During those years, there was no NAACP chapter in Carroll County. That came some years later. There was no Hispanic representation advocacy resource here in Carroll County. So CCRE really started at the ground level with promoting diversity in Carroll County. And again, it was kind of reactive to what was happening with overt racial discrimination that was front and center in this community. But it evolved over time to try to influence more the cultural and educational components of this community. Now, years later, the Carroll County Public Schools, they have those resources. They have some expertise in terms of minority achievement and trying to provide education and support, and not just for the African American community, but as you referenced before, all the populations that may be underrepresented or overlooked in our educational system.
Right, and that's some great work that you guys have already done. And it's definitely important to say that in order to have this level of progress, it's not easy to do. Like we've done a lot of fighting and a lot of debating. Yep.
We have had some resistance.
For sure.
And when you were talking earlier about diversity, that we're not just talking about black-white issues, but we're also talking about sexual orientation, we're talking about gender issues, we're talking about populations that have been disempowered historically and how they can be brought front and center and be supported. So our conferences have ranged from addressing the LGBTQ community and bringing that kind of front and center, our Hispanic community, and there have been some other kind of diverse topics that we've addressed over the years. As you mentioned, most recently, the focus was on, or the topic was on Kaepernick's taking a knee stance and what that represented.
Right, and
we've tried to fill that void over a number of years and with regard to different situations and institutions.
Exactly, and I appreciate CCRE's efforts in involving young people into these conversations, because so many young people limit their expression about racial issues to a 160 character response on Twitter or Instagram posts, where we're having real conversations in real time with people that could potentially do something about it in our community. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week, right, about how CCRE has jumped through a lot of hoops in order to put these conferences on, and you talked about how you guys were trying to get into Carroll Community College in order to house this conference. But a lot of the city officials that we come in contact with, like even the higher ups at the colleges, have a certain identity, and they are not open to even housing the conversations themselves.
That's correct, and that's really unfortunate, and it speaks to the fact that we've still got a lot of work to do.
Right.
We can't yet create a completely open forum, particularly in a public tax-funded kind of institution, to do the kind of work that you and I are talking about today.
Exactly.
And so we have to just keep looking at opportunities and organizations that will open the door for us and allow us to do this work. And over time, hopefully that filters out to the larger community.
Right, and just in a more general sense, right? When we talk about racial equality, not only in the community but just like across the nation. I talk to my girlfriend all the time. She's a political science major. She wants to go into law, and we have these conversations often. And one of the main things that we say would be the quickest way to change is if we get minority representation into these city official positions, into these judge and prosecutor positions, you know what I'm saying? But it's so hard for us to get those positions, even if we have, some of the most talented minority individuals, if we have some of the most, privy and educated individuals, the higher ups, the individuals who are the gatekeepers, a lot of those individuals are either heterosexual white men or heterosexual white women, and they don't share the experiences of a young black man in America, or they don't know the stories about the individuals who are being racially profiled and police brutality, because they know all of the issues that are out in the mainstream media and they treat them as individual issues, but we don't focus on the overarching issues as far as racial equality. So I always say that we need to be in positions to make change, but it's so hard to get those positions because the people who are making those decisions on who gets those positions are not diverse in a sense.
Right. The other thing I'll just say quickly in response to that is we need people to step up and lead these conversations and to be welcoming in how they do that. I don't know whether you happened to watch President Obama about a week ago in a roundtable discussion that was filmed on television. And he talked about the divide in our country, but he went beyond that to say that people who just want to kind of throw stones or to throw their opinions without offering an invitation to be in dialogue with each other, they're only contributing to the problem, not the solution. So if you or any of our listening audience get an opportunity to read that review or see that dialogue that President Obama did about a week ago, I would really encourage you to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to check that out on my own. I have not seen that, but I definitely will, see that after we end this conversation. Now, I want to talk specifically about racial equality in education, right? Of course, I'm a college student. I'm an aspiring professor and an aspiring communication professional, right? So this is something that I'm going to encounter in my professional career. And even as a student at McDaniel College, we talked about the progress that McDaniel has made as far as racial equality. And a lot of people don't know that racial equality is still a problem, especially in higher education today. Like, this isn't a dated issue. Like, I have looked at a website, and there's two particular websites. There's one website for Black students at colleges, and then there's another website that I found for Hispanic students at colleges. And this is an open forum where students are able to log on and talk about racial issues at their school. And it's totally anonymous, and it's like, I think one of them is called the Black Students Journal, the Black College Students Journal. And I'll be able to send you that link, or hopefully we can put this link somewhere else that's attached to this video. Yeah. But literally every single day we have students across the country talking about racial issues. Oh, my professor racially profiled me when I walked into the classroom. Or there was a racial slur that was put on one of the school posters. Like, this stuff is happening each and every day. We have schools like UCLA who only have 2% Black students. So we have Black students that don't have equal opportunities as white students at these institutions, still paying, thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to these schools. But there is still racial work that needs to be done in these institutions. So I just wanted to bring that to light. Like, this is why this conversation is so important, because even though college students don't know that this is happening to them, and the McDaniel campus is a pretty safe campus for this, there are also, campuses with thousands of students on them that isn't a safe place for college students.
Right, right. Back to what President Obama was saying the other night, that not only do we have to have opportunities for people to dialogue, get support, and acknowledgement like what you're talking about, but there have to be opportunities for crossing boundaries. And it's like we've kind of lost sight of how to do that in some kind of constructive and meaningful way. And we have to get back to it. Talking about your experience here at McDaniel College, I shared with you, Jordan, that I graduated from what was then Western Maryland College in 1977, and I said to you that I could probably count on two hands how many minority students we had back in when I graduated in 1977. And so when I come to this campus today, I see a very different kind of place than, and I'm not suggesting that we've arrived, but there has clearly been, and my guess is intentional kinds of initiatives and opportunities to move us to where we are today. And I can tell you that I was very fortunate at 22 years old and being a social work student to get an education around social and racial justice issues that the vast majority of the student body here was never exposed to. And that was really the beginning of the journey for me, and led me to a colleague who went to school here with me, who opened up Interfaith Action for Racial Justice in Baltimore City. We linked with him, and some things took off from there. So just to give you a little history from, where I was and where you are today, how you are continuing the work.
Yeah, history is important, and it's amazing and it's kind of unfathomable to think that there were people like wearing white hoods 25 years ago, just freely walking around the streets of Westminster.
That's not that long ago.
It's really not.
But you know what's happened is that it's kind of gone underground, if you will. The discrimination, the racism is perhaps now more subtle, unspoken. It's still influencing, in an institutional sense, our culture today.
Exactly.
And again, that's not to suggest we haven't made progress, but it's taken a different form. And in some ways, it's a different kind of insidious aspect of our American culture.
Exactly, definitely. And that's like a whole conversation on its own as far as institutional racism. And I know we're kind of low on time.
Yeah.
I do want to highlight, though, the work that McDaniel College has done, as you spoke about earlier, as far as becoming a more diverse, more inclusive campus community. This past year, we just welcomed not only our largest freshman class in McDaniel College history, but also our most diverse freshman class in McDaniel College history. A class that's so diverse that the number of minority students in this freshman class actually outnumbered the number of majority students in this freshman class.
You had shared that with me, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I was fortunate enough to become a part of their orientation this past summer. I was a local leader, which is kind of like a pre-orientation facilitator for these students. They would have the opportunity to come during the weekend over the summer, and we would have about 60 to 70 students per session, and we would break into small groups. You know, we would lead activities. We would take them down to Westminster and share the history with them, as well as, you know, the different engagements and activities that they can engage in, you know, in downtown Westminster. We expose them to campus resources, you know, how to talk to their professors to get certain opportunities. So we are becoming a more inclusive campus that is becoming more diverse, but we are also making a conscious effort to give aid, the aid that we talked about, and the help for these students that they need. And one cool thing that I actually learned today was that there is a required class for freshmen that wasn't originally offered to them, and that is this My Career course that freshmen, not only the freshmen are going to be taking, but once they become a junior, they're required to take it by their junior year. That is going to expose them to more career opportunities. So I just thought that was an amazing thing that they added.
Yeah. And didn't you say to me when we were together last week that you're going to be doing a presentation to the freshman class, or there's some opportunity for you coming up here?
Yes, I am, definitely. So for this Jan term, that is coming up, January 2020. I've had the opportunity to speak to the entire freshman class.
Okay.
And it's in concert with a class called My Design, and it's all about career readiness, right? What do you do in order to go about choosing your major, to choose the professional career path that you would like to go down, and then how to capitalize on those opportunities once you leave McDaniel College. And I know that we're a little short on time, so I want to ask you any final thoughts, and how can students find out how to register for the 2020 CCRE conference?
Right. So, yeah, let me make sure that people know that we have a good website for our organization, and it's www.carrollcitizensforracialequality.org, spelled out just as it sounds. And we have some history of the organization. We've maintained a volume of newsletters and any current events pertaining to racial justice issues in the county. We try to put them on the website. So you can certainly look there. The date has been set. I believe it's the first Friday in May, but don't hold me to that. But it's on, again, it's on the website.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
And that conference will again this year be held at the United Church of Christ, St. Paul's UCC, right in downtown Westminster, and it's about a 10-minute walk from campus. So I would really encourage any students that are able to come down and join us. The registration will be online, and it's a free conference. We serve a breakfast and a lunch and a full day of speakers and panel presenters.
Yep. Thank you, Gary.
All right.
Thank you for
Jordan,
meeting with me.
It's always
I'll
good
see
to
you
meet
guys
with
at the conference.
Okay.